Annie's asking, this is a really interesting one, tips for managing imposter syndrome.
Yeah, we're going to talk about confidence today. I know you've got a couple of questions around confidence. And, what I would say is that confidence is a skill. It is not a trait. So it's like any skill you have to work on. You have to nurture, you have to strengthen it, you have to use it all the time. I talk about confidence as a muscle. So the more you use that muscle, the stronger it gets. And so we're going to go through some tips. I'll share some tips around building confidence with your audience.
Yeah, fantastic. And when we share those tips, maybe we can cover off a bit around tips for managing remote teams at the same time, if we can just park that for a second. I just want to answer Jenny's question. So Jenny is a new leader, and can you offer a couple of tips and tricks for setting yourself up to succeed as a new leader, which is really exciting?
Yeah. Hi, Jenny. Welcome to Leadership. Thank you for your question. Look, I would say, again, really design the leader you want to be. Be very authentic to who you are. Stay true to yourself. Really do a bit of work on your values, because those values will help you become the leader that you want to be, and believe in yourself. I say to all of the people, and particularly women that I work with, is believe in yourself. Because when we start to believe again, that's when the magic starts to happen. So yeah, but stay true to who you are.
Fantastic. And final leadership point from Caroline. Great question, Caroline. What do you do when your leader's not doing a great job? Do you talk to them one-on-one? Do you go over the head and talk to their manager and risk the wrath? What's a good strategy here?
It's a really great question. And, I would say honesty is always my best policy. So I would start with talking to the person. And, often people don't know how they're behaving. Sometimes they do, but often they don't. And so sometimes we need to actually help people recognize that their behavior is not appropriate, or they're not giving you what you need, or maybe they're just too busy and they're running around like headless chooks, and they don't even realize that they're not giving you the attention or sharing their leadership thoughts. So I always say start there. Start with talking to the person.
I also think before joining an organization, and I completely respect it's not always possible, but the more due diligence you can do, whether or not you have contacts who know people on LinkedIn, just try and get a read on the people you're going to be working with. Because I think the interview process, is respectfully interviewing your potential employer as much as them interviewing you, because we all spend so much time at work, right? So you've got to get on together. And I guess it's a different version of what you said. People leave the leader, not the company, typically.
Yes. I love it that you say that, David, because I work with, again, a lot of women that I say exactly that to them is when you go for an interview, you have the exact same right to interview the person that's interviewing you, because it's really important that the organization you're going to and the leader you're working for and the people you're working with connect with you on a much deeper level, because that's where you really start to learn to be a great leader and progress in your career and really deliver great things.
And I also think it's one of the great interview questions, asking someone, can you tell me a bit about your leadership style? Because A, it's critical information to know, and B, the person interviewing you is going to be generally pretty pleased that you're actually asking them about themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Do you know, when I was CEO of Sportsgirl, and as you know, I was CEO there for 7 years and CEO of Suzanne for 6 years. So in total, I was there for 13. And in my Sportsgirl years, every single person that would come into the business, I would sit down and have an induction with as the CEO. And, sometimes that was one-on-one and sometimes it was in a small group, but it did not matter who you were. It didn't matter if you were the junior planner. It didn't matter if you were in the mail room. It didn't matter who you were. To me, it was really, really important. One, that I made a connection with that person, and two, that they knew me and my leadership style and my vision for the company and my vision for my people. So, it's really important that we connect with every single person in our business. And I think, again, I think where a lot of leaders fail these days is that they look at just their top line leadership and think, if I focus there, I'm great. But our leadership transcends right from the top to the bottom.
So today, I assume that would take place via some sort of Zoom or Teams or WebEx.
Yeah.
Do you think that's becoming harder to do, though? Because what I've noticed is you know, it's amazing people are still tuning into our webinars, for example, but it's getting harder because people are getting Zoom fatigue.
Yes.
You know, looking at a screen all day, I find it much harder than talking to people in the human form.
Yes.
Do you think that's probably going to become harder and harder the longer this goes on?
Yes, I do agree with that. And I think particularly now, and people in Victoria, which only you and I are, we're only in suburbs not too far from each other. And, you know, people on this sort of lockdown are very fatigued. And so, yes, I do think it's going to become harder and harder. And I do, you know, hope we get out of this soon, but I also encourage people to try and have that human connection where you can, you know, instead of having a Zoom call, if you can, and you're in the same area, go for a walk and have your meeting on a walk with someone, you know, just try and keep that connection up where you can. It's really important. We are wired for human connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Humans are, you know, we're tribal beings, right? So we'll keep moving. We're going to talk about your book. So first of all, why did you call it Leaders by Design?
Yeah, so I absolutely, as I said, believe that we can all become leaders by design. You can become the leader you want to be. You can become the leader you wanted to have, and you can become a leader that people choose to follow. And it's kind of not in two parts, but the purpose of my book is two parts. So the first part or purpose is that it's a part autobiography. So it talks about my life journey, 16 to CEO and everything in between, including the woman and leader I am today. And my goal is really to inspire women to step up, to have a voice, to live with purpose, to believe in themselves and become the leaders that they want to be, not only in business, but also in life, and live with this real confidence and also find their superpower. And there's a bit in my book about finding your superpower. Yeah. And I also want my book to really inspire leaders, both men and women, to embrace a new era of leadership, and one that I keep talking about and one that I've been living in for a very long time, which is based on kindness and compassion and authenticity and collaboration. And as I've said, one that puts people at the heart of everything that we do. And so I've really packed my book with tips and advice and insights and, you know, guidance that's really relevant to all ages, whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, whether you're an entrepreneur, a volunteer, it doesn't really matter where you are in that journey. I really want to inspire people to believe in the power of, you know, leading in their own lives. So yeah, it's been a fascinating and fantastic journey writing the book and then sharing it with everyone. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we're delighted to be able to share more copies of your book with the audience today. You talk of kindness as a new currency of leaders. I think it's critical to talk about this a bit more. And just to clarify, by being kind, we're not talking about being soft, right?
No. And I think that's the big misconception, right? So when this is one of my favorite, well, I've got lots of favorite topics, but this is one of my favorite topics, is because, you know, kindness is not the first word that comes to mind when people think about great leadership. It's just not. And, you know, I really challenge leaders on that thought. And I absolutely believe that kindness is what is going to separate good and great leaders of the future. And as you said, David, you know, there is this misconception that kind leaders are weak leaders. And I believe the opposite is actually true. I believe kindness and kind leaders requires absolute courage and strength. And as I said earlier, you know, kind leaders can make good, strong, tough business decisions with kindness. And I talk about kindness as being the new superpower for leaders. And in fact, it's not only a new superpower, it's a form of currency. It's like a trade. So one we can trade for loyalty and commitment and high performance. And, you know, I really believe that it's time for kind leaders to step up and be game changers, not only for this generation, but also for the future generation. And, you know, kindness starts at the top. And as I said, it's one of my values, and it's the way I've led in my 13 years as a CEO. And, you know, it's really important. But I also like to clarify when I talk about kindness is kindness doesn't mean people can fly under the radar. Kindness doesn't mean there is no accountability or we can accept underperformance or there are no rules and boundaries. It's not just a free-for-all. You know, kindness is about setting clear expectations for people, holding them accountable, giving honest feedback, you know, embracing growth and performance. And, you know, I talk about really pushing people beyond their comfort zone. You know, no one grows when we're in our comfort zone. So pushing people beyond that comfort zone and really building true true human connections.
Yeah.
You know, not just in our life. I really want people to shine the spotlight on leading with kindness in all areas of their life, as well as their leadership life.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you could argue you're actually being really cruel to someone if you just let them carry on doing a role that they're not well suited for, or, you know, struggling or whatever it might be. So do you think that like kindness being used as a word in the business context, maybe certainly pre-pandemic, certainly 10 years ago, you might have called it compassion. Do you think the pandemic and the fact, I want to get your view, because I know you're not a massive fan of this work-life balance thing, but do you think with the pandemic and everything sort of being squashed into, actually, we've got one life and we're working and we're, you know, having a home life, and it's all it being compressed, do you think there's less sort of now corporate spiel in a bit, and that words like kindness are now going to enter the corporate world a bit more, whereas before in the old shirt and tie world it might have been like, well, you know, that's, you know, it's compassionate leadership?
Yes, yeah, I actually agree with you. I do. I think that this change, I think that might be part of the silver lining, because there will be lots of silver linings and great things that come out of this, you know, terrible pandemic that we're in. And I do think that, and I do hope as well, that there is going to be a lot more kindness and compassion in the way that we lead people, because it has been very, very challenging for a lot of people working in this way. And it has been very challenging for a lot of leaders as well. So yes, I absolutely agree with you, David. I think that there will be hopefully this new way of working, which is kindness and compassion.